Ron DeSantis employs another bold strategy to revitalize his struggling campaign. Double down on the stuff that caused his campaign to struggle in the first place. Intrigued? Then click that like, subscribe, and the alert bell, and check out my Patreon, and enjoy the video. We've dedicated several videos in the past several weeks to picking on Republican Governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis. Number one, because it feels good. There's quite a bit of schadenfreude there, which I think is perfectly justified. But also because there's quite a bit to talk about because, again, he is a major figure in the Republican Party. He is the most prominent Republican governor of a highly populous state. And he was, second only to Donald Trump in the Republican primary, although recent polling is indicating that he may very well lose that position as well. But the bottom line is he generates a lot of news. He's a relevant figure. And there is quite a bit of news about Ron DeSantis lately, and all of it's bad. So all of these reasons kind of intersect, and it explains why we're talking about him so much. But he went on the new Jesse Watters program. Jesse Watters, who was recently, he took Tucker Carlson's place in the coveted 8 p.m. slot on Fox News and was recently excoriated by his own mother, who is a Democrat. She should get her own show on Fox News, by the way. But DeSantis went on Jesse Watters' new show, and he basically unveiled a bold new strategy to try to revitalize his presidential campaign. And again, it's basically to double down on all the culture war crap, which has, I don't know if it's, I guess I can't say that it's necessarily caused his campaign to flounder, but it certainly hasn't helped. But let's hear it straight from the governor's mouth, and then we will unpack it together.
We do have these shares. We believe that when you take your eye off the ball like that, you're not following your fiduciary duty to do the best you can for your shareholders. So we're going to be launching an inquiry about Bud Light and InBev, and it could be something that leads to a derivative lawsuit filed on behalf of the shareholders of the Florida pension fund, because at the end of the day, there's got to be penalties for when you put business aside to focus on your social agenda at the expense of hardworking people.
Are you looking at Disney, too? I don't know if you saw the show last night, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Disney's firing 6 of the dwarves. They think being a dwarf isn't inclusive enough, Governor.
So, if you didn't catch that, Ron DeSantis is intending to basically file a lawsuit against InBev, which is the parent company of Bud Light. Bud Light, of course, being, I personally do not enjoy Bud Light. I think it's a disgusting beer in terms of its flavor. But they made the bold social stance of doing a social media partnership with a transgender influencer, Dylan Mulvaney. Now, again, it's called rainbow capitalism of sorts. I have no doubt that Bud Light, has had cynical intentions behind this this move. But in terms of at least the on-paper social agenda, that's really good. That's inclusive towards trans people. It's great stuff. Now, as a result, of course, it triggered a massive reaction from Republicans and conservatives. Remember, the group that opposes cancel culture, that doesn't believe that you should punish people based on disagreements or decisions, right? My God, you shouldn't try to punish somebody reputationally or financially for doing something socially that you disagree with, as long as it's not illegal, right? Except, of course, conservatives and Republicans violate this norm all the time. They constantly attack organizations and companies and groups and seek to hurt them, cripple them financially for transgressing in a social way. And Bud Light's no exception. So, of course, conservatives not just stopped drinking Bud Light, which, of course, is their right to do. They repeatedly called for boycotts of Bud Light. And as a result, I think Bud Light sales year to date are down 25%. All right. So as a result of this conservative backlash. And so Ron DeSantis' position is, listen, the Florida government has about $53 million worth of InBev stock. Again, InBev being the parent company of Bud Light, in Florida's pension funds of about $180 billion. The governor claimed that shareholders were affected after sales of Bud Light declined as a result of conservative backlash to the beer brand after it worked with Dylan Mulvaney. So this is the same mentality that drove Ron DeSantis to pick a fight with Disney. Disney being, of course, Florida's biggest employer and biggest tourist attraction, one of the most powerful corporations on the planet, with an army of vicious, powerful lawyers. If any private entity or any commercial entity can go toe-to-toe with a state like Florida and a governor like DeSantis, it's Disney. And as you may recall, Disney expressed opposition to a transphobic and homophobic a piece of legislation called that was colloquially referred to as the Don't Say Gay bill, which then became the Don't Say Gay law. Disney just expressed opposition to it. They said, listen, this conflicts with our values, and we're going to lobby against it, and we're going to try to push for its repeal. And as a result, DeSantis picked a fight with Disney. He's like, okay, if you're going to do that, then I'm going to revoke your special, like certain administrative privileges that Disney had enjoyed for decades. Disney was basically, in terms of the Disney theme park in Florida, it basically had a sweetheart deal that was granted 50 or 60 years ago in what's called the Reedy Creek District, which is the name of the property on which the Disney resort resides. And Disney was essentially given near absolute control over this piece of property in Florida, and tax breaks, et cetera, and so forth. And again, they enjoyed it for decades, and DeSantis was fine with it until Disney objected to this piece of legislation. Then DeSantis decided, and the Republican supermajority in Florida, decided to try to revoke that special arrangement with Disney, which again, if they had chosen to do so for any other reason, like if they said, listen, just on principle, we don't think that the government should be making these sort of sweetheart deals with even corporations as powerful as Disney. We think that that's inappropriate. Fine, fair enough. But that was not their position. That was not DeSantis' position. He was perfectly content to give kickbacks to businesses and conglomerates like Disney. But the moment Disney defied him or spoke out against him, then he wanted to punish them politically. And so they've been in a legal battle ever since. And Disney, as a result, withdrew a $1 billion development deal in Disney, so in Florida. That's huge, right? That's going to affect Florida residents. That's potential jobs lost, potential tourist attractions lost. The ongoing lawsuit, one of the presiding judge in the suit between Disney and DeSantis, he recused himself. DeSantis has asked for immunity from the deal, basically to try to get the case dismissed from court. We don't know where that has fallen yet. I don't think it's been decided. And in terms of the polling, it's not good. Even in Florida, DeSantis' home state, where he is governor, extremely powerful governor, the polls show that they're effectively a 50-50 if you look at Floridians, right? Half of them support DeSantis in this culture war battle against Disney, and the other half support Disney, and that's in DeSantis' home turf. What can he expect from the rest of the country if the best he can squeak by is 50% support in his home turf, in his own backyard? It's not good. And then, as we've discussed in previous videos, his polling nationally isn't doing that well. There was a time when he was neck and neck with Donald Trump, and now he's like lagging behind. He's closer to Vivek and Chris Christie and Tim Scott and Mike Pence and Nikki Haley. So, again, I think this is absolutely stupid. Ron DeSantis has got to start moderating a bit. This might appeal to a niche group of like MAGA Republicans who really live and die and breathe in the culture war stuff, which has no material impact on their lives. It doesn't affect their health care, their education, their pocketbook. It doesn't impact them materially, but it gets them fired up because they live and die and, cringe conservative Facebook memes shared by their uncles and all this stuff. They get riled up by the propagandists on Fox News. But that's not going to help him in a general election. What's this going to do when they're like, listen, you're wasting all this time picking fights with corporations. And by the way, aren't you a conservative? I thought the free market should be able to do whatever they want. If companies want to, advocate or partner with trans influencers, or if they want to take a more inclusive tone or adopt a more inclusive posture, shouldn't they be allowed to do that? Why are you trying to use the power of the state and the power of the law to punish them? Right? It's a betrayal of conservative values, which, according to some polls, some people are reporting. I mean, this is the crux of Chris Christie, who is one of Ron DeSantis's rivals for the Republican primary. This is the crux of his disagreement with DeSantis. He's like, look, you say you're a conservative, but you're trying to use the power of the state to punish, market actors and market forces for doing things that you don't like. That sounds really authoritarian and not conservative, laissez-faire, free market. So anyway, per usual, Ron DeSantis is just a nexus of inconsistencies and hypocrisies. And yet, in the face of a struggling campaign, it seems like he's just desperate to double down and do what he's already done. Like, okay, picking the fight with Disney, that didn't help. Maybe if I pick a fight with Bud Light, maybe that'll do it.